Kai Madison Trump had always been more than just the eldest grandchild of the sitting U.S. President Donald Trump. A fierce competitor on the golf course, she had developed a reputation for her focus, determination, and unshakable confidence. Despite the intense spotlight on her family, Kai had built her own identity, not as a mere heiress but as a young athlete with serious potential. It was a crisp autumn afternoon at Liberty Valley High School where Kai, now a senior, had recently transferred to complete her final year. Her presence on the school's golf team had quickly become the talk of the campus. With her powerful drives and precise putting, she had dominated every tournament she entered. But her success hadn't come without its share of critics. One in particular stood out, Nate Parker, a self-proclaimed progressive voice on campus known for his sharp tongue and outspoken views. Nate was a rising star in the school's debate team, known for his unfiltered rants against anything remotely conservative. He often found himself clashing with the school's more traditional students, finding endless ways to challenge their beliefs. When Kai joined the golf team, Nate saw an opportunity. To him, she wasn't just a fellow student, she was a symbol of everything he claimed to stand against. The showdown began unexpectedly one Friday afternoon when Kai was practicing her swings on the freshly cut greens of the Liberty Valley golf course. Nate, who had no real interest in sports, happened to be passing by with a group of friends. Spotting Kai, he smirked, unable to resist the chance to confront the young Trump in front of his friends. "Hey, Trump," he called out, his voice dripping with mockery as he strolled up to her. "You know, I've heard you're some kind of golf prodigy. Must be nice, having everything handed to you on a silver platter. Daddy's name must work wonders for your handicap." His friends chuckled behind him, their eyes gleaming with anticipation for what they hoped would be a viral-worthy confrontation. Kai paused, her gloved hands still gripping the club, her gaze steady as she slowly turned to face Nate. She had heard this kind of taunt before, it came with the territory of being a Trump, but she had long since learned to handle it with grace and a touch of quiet ferocity. Her intense, ice-blue eyes locked onto Nate's, her posture straightening as she considered how to respond. "Oh, so you've been paying attention to my game?" she replied smoothly, a faint smile playing on her lips. "I'm flattered. But if you think it's all about the name, you're welcome to step up and see if you can keep up." The challenge was clear, and Nate, not one to back down, stepped closer, his confidence unwavering. "You really want to do this?" he shot back, crossing his arms. "Fine. I'm not scared of some rich kid swinging a stick. Let's see what you're really made of." Kai chuckled, her grip tightening around the club. She loved this, the thrill of competition, the chance to prove herself beyond her last name. "All right then," she said, her voice firm and calm. "Meet me here tomorrow at noon. We'll settle this on the course. And let's make it interesting. Loser does 100 push-ups right here, in front of everyone." Nate's friends let out a collective ooh as their leader's expression flickered with a hint of uncertainty, but his pride wouldn't allow him to back down. "You're on," he spat, turning sharply on his heel as he led his crew back toward the main building. Kai watched him go, her heart already thrumming with the familiar rhythm of competition. She knew this wasn't just about golf, it was about standing up for herself, her family, and the principles she had come to embody. And as she watched Nate's retreating figure, she couldn't help but smirk, already strategizing how to make the most of this unexpected challenge. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Kai sat on the balcony of her family's Manhattan apartment, her golf bag leaning against the glass railing. She had always found comfort in the view of the bustling city below, a reminder of both the challenges and opportunities that came with being a Trump. Her phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a message from her younger brother, Donnie, who had apparently caught wind of the challenge through the ever-churning family grapevine. "Donnie, yo, I heard you challenged some kid at your school to a golf match? That's my sister, always going for the win. Need some advice?" Kai smiled, her fingers tapping out a quick response. "Kai, haha, thanks, but I've got this. He's one of those types, all talk, no game. I'm not too worried." Donnie quickly replied, his supportive yet teasing tone shining through. "Donnie, just remember, don't just win. Make a statement. You've got this." Kai chuckled, appreciating the encouragement. Her brother had always understood the pressure that came with their family name. She set her phone down and leaned back, her mind already calculating the best approach for tomorrow's showdown. She knew Nate would come ready to taunt, to undermine her confidence, but she also knew that when it came to golf, focus and precision were her greatest weapons. The next morning, Liberty Valley High was buzzing. Word of the impromptu golf match had spread like wildfire. Students whispered in hallways, trying to pick sides, and a small crowd had already begun gathering near the practice green by the time Kai arrived. She walked calmly, her hair tied back in a neat ponytail, her golf cap pulled low, casting a confident shadow over her eyes. She wore her usual competitive attire, a sleek, navy blue polo with her initials embroidered in white over the heart, paired with a crisp white skirt and matching shoes. Nate was already there, leaning against a bench with his arms crossed, clearly enjoying the attention. His friends stood behind him, trying to hype him up as he swung an imaginary club, pretending to be the champion he had never been. As Kai approached, he straightened, a smug grin spreading across his face. "Decided to show up, huh?" he sneered, trying to set the tone. "Thought you might have reconsidered, once you realized who you're up against." Kai gave him a cool, measured look, her eyes briefly scanning the crowd before returning to his. "Why would I reconsider? I never back down from a challenge." Nate's grin faltered for a split second, but he quickly recovered, clapping his hands together with exaggerated enthusiasm. "All right then, let's lay out the rules. First to win 3 holes, no gimmies, and if you lose, you do the push-ups right here in front of everyone." Kai smirked, effortlessly matching his intensity. "Fine by me. But don't forget, if you lose, you're the one dropping for 100 push-ups, in front of your entire fan club." She nodded toward his friends, who suddenly looked a bit less certain of their leader's chances. As they made their way to the first tee, the crowd followed, their murmurs of anticipation growing louder. Kai felt her heart beating in that familiar, steady rhythm, the pulse of competition that always sharpened her focus. She watched as Nate clumsily swung his club a few times, clearly trying to psych himself up, his movements lacking the smooth, practiced grace of a real golfer. Kai, in contrast, closed her eyes for a brief moment, inhaling deeply, letting the cool morning air fill her lungs. She could feel the energy of the crowd, the weight of the challenge, but she was calm, a quiet storm, ready to strike. As they reached the first tee, Nate's bravado returned. He leaned in close, lowering his voice just enough for only Kai to hear. "Hope you're ready to eat some humble pie, princess." Kai didn't flinch. Instead, she gave him a sideways glance, her expression a mixture of amusement and fierce determination. "I'm always ready. Let's see if you can keep up." With a final, confident glance at the fairway ahead, Kai placed her ball on the tee, adjusted her stance, and locked her eyes on the distant flag. The match had begun, and as the first swing cracked through the crisp air, the lesson was already underway, one that Nate would not soon forget. As the crowd gathered around the first tee, Kai took her position, her stance balanced and her grip firm. The early morning sun cast long shadows across the course, adding a touch of drama to the unfolding showdown. Nate, still riding the high of his public challenge, had managed to work the small crowd into a buzz of whispers and anticipation. Kai closed her eyes briefly, mentally running through her routine. She had played in high-stakes tournaments before, regional championships, high-profile junior matches, even a few celebrity charity events with her grandfather watching from the gallery. But this felt different. It wasn't just a game. It was a chance to prove herself, not just as a trump, but as a serious athlete. Nate stepped up first, his friends murmuring encouragement as he adjusted his stance. He took a deep breath, the metal head of his driver glinting in the sunlight as he lined up his shot. With a quick, somewhat jerky backswing, he let the club fly, sending the ball slicing through the air. It veered sharply to the right, landing in the rough with a muted thud, the long grass swallowing the ball almost instantly. A few chuckles rippled through the crowd, but Nate's face remained stoic, his jaw tightening slightly as he forced a grin. "Just a warm-up shot," he muttered, backing away with a quick glance at Kai, hoping she hadn't noticed the tremble in his hands. Kai, unfazed, stepped forward, taking her time as she planted her feet and aligned her shot. She breathed deeply, her focus narrowing to a single point, the distant flag swaying gently in the breeze. She swung smoothly, the motion a graceful arc of power and precision, her follow-through as clean as a well-rehearsed dance move. The ball rocketed off her club, cutting through the air in a perfect trajectory, landing squarely in the center of the fairway about 250 yards down the line. The crowd erupted in a mix of awe and admiration, a few students even letting out impressed whistles. Kai stepped back, her face a picture of calm confidence as she nodded subtly to herself. Nate felt a pang of unease creep into his chest as he watched the crowd's reaction. He had underestimated her badly. But he wasn't about to back down. Not yet. As they made their way down the fairway, Nate scrambled to recover, his second shot from the rough a desperate attempt to close the gap. But his swing, still too rushed and lacking precision, only managed to send the ball deeper into a nearby bunker. The small crowd let out a collective oof, as the ball disappeared into the sand, the challenge quickly turning into a struggle for Nate. Kai approached her ball with the calm, practiced demeanor of a seasoned pro. Her second shot was just as clean, the iron connecting perfectly as the ball soared toward the green, landing just a few yards short of the hole. She had set herself up for an easy putt, and as she walked back to her bag, she couldn't help but catch Nate's frustrated expression from the corner of her eye. When they reached the green, Nate's face was flushed, his earlier bravado clearly shaken. He managed to chip his ball out of the bunker, but it skidded past the hole, rolling to the far edge of the green, leaving him a long, tricky putt just to save face. Kai, on the other hand, took her time lining up her putt. She felt the crowd's eyes on her, the pressure building, but she had learned long ago how to channel that energy. With a steady hand, she tapped the ball gently, watching as it rolled smoothly along the perfectly manicured grass, clinking into the cup with a satisfying finality. The crowd erupted in cheers, a few students even breaking into a round of spontaneous applause. Kai allowed herself a small, confident smile as she stepped back, letting the moment sink in. Nate, shoulders slumping slightly, grudgingly took his position for his final putt, managing to sink it with a bit more force than necessary. The first hole was officially in the books, and the scoreboard now read Kai 1, Nate 0. As they walked to the next tee, Nate's friends fell unusually silent, their earlier confidence in their leader clearly shaken. Kai, meanwhile, felt the adrenaline coursing through her veins, her competitive spirit fully ignited. She wasn't just playing to win, she was playing to make a statement. And with the first blow landed, she was only just getting started. Nate, shoulders slumping slightly, grudgingly took his position for his final putt, managing to sink it with a bit more force than necessary. The first hole was officially in the books, and the scoreboard now read Kai 1, Nate 0. As they walked to the next tee, Nate's friends fell unusually silent, their earlier confidence in their leader clearly shaken. Kai, meanwhile, felt the adrenaline coursing through her veins, her competitive spirit fully ignited. She wasn't just playing to win, she was playing to make a statement. And with the first blow landed, she was only just getting started. As they approached the second hole, the atmosphere around the course shifted. The crowd had grown, word of the challenge spreading quickly through Liberty Valley High. Students who barely knew a 9-iron from a driver had gathered, eager to see how this clash of personalities would unfold. Kai could sense the momentum building, each step toward the next tee box a reminder that she was on her home turf, the golf course where focus and skill outweighed bravado. Nate, however, still clung to his pride. He adjusted his cap, trying to shake off the humiliation of the first hole. He muttered to himself, his jaw clenched as he took a few practice swings. He had hoped to rattle Kai, to throw her off balance with his taunts, but instead it was his own confidence that had cracked. The second hole was a par 4, a slight dogleg to the left with a narrow fairway bordered by dense trees. It was the kind of hole that demanded precision, not exactly Nate's strong suit, as he had already proven. Kai, on the other hand, thrived in these moments where strategy and execution could make or break a round. Nate took the honors, stepping up to the tee with a forced grin. He took a deep breath, trying to block out the murmurs around him. His swing, however, remained unsteady, the club slicing through the air as his ball veered sharply into the trees, the sound of snapping branches echoing through the crisp morning air. The crowd winced collectively, a few students exchanging worried glances. Kai watched the ball disappear into the woods, her expression unreadable. She knew the pressure was getting to him, the wild swing, the forced confidence, the quick, panicked glances at his friends. She felt a brief flash of sympathy but quickly pushed it aside. This wasn't the time for mercy. She stepped up to the tee, her routine methodical and precise. She adjusted her stance, took a deep breath, and swung. The ball shot off the face of her driver with a satisfying crack, cutting through the air in a perfect, controlled arc, landing squarely in the middle of the fairway, just shy of the dogleg. The crowd erupted in applause, a few students even starting a chant of Kai. Kai! Kai! As they made their way down the fairway, Nate's frustration boiled over. He hacked his way out of the trees, his shots growing wilder with each desperate swing. His friends, once full of confidence, now hung back, their faces a mix of embarrassment and disbelief. Nate's game was unraveling and everyone could see it. Kai, meanwhile, remained composed. Her second shot was a smooth, controlled approach that landed her ball just a few feet from the pin. She glanced over at Nate, who was still struggling to find the green, his face a deep shade of red, his shoulders tense. She almost felt sorry for him, almost. When they finally reached the green, Nate's face was a mask of frustration. He had managed to chip his ball within 10 feet of the hole, but the putt was anything but easy. He took a deep breath, lined up his shot, and swung, only to watch as the ball lipped out, spinning mockingly around the edge of the cup before rolling a few feet away. A few gasps rippled through the crowd, the sting of public failure cutting deep. Nate's shoulders slumped, his earlier bravado shattered. Kai, on the other hand, took her time, her eyes locking onto the hole as she lined up her putt. She tapped the ball gently, watching as it rolled true, clinking into the cup with a satisfying finality. Kai 2, Nate 0. The crowd erupted again, the chant picking up once more as Kai stepped back, her face a calm mask of focus and determination. She glanced over at Nate, who was now avoiding eye contact, his earlier cockiness replaced by a simmering, humiliated silence. As they walked to the third tee, Kai felt the momentum fully shift in her favor. Nate's confidence had crumbled, his friends had grown quiet, and the crowd had clearly chosen its favorite. She tightened her glove, her eyes narrowing as she looked down the fairway. She could taste victory, and she wasn't about to let it slip away. By the time they reached the third hole, the energy around the course had shifted entirely. Nate's once confident swagger had faded into a tense, self-conscious shuffle, his eyes darting nervously to the crowd that had grown even larger. Word of his unraveling had clearly spread, and students continued to gather, their phones out, capturing every moment. Kai, however, remained the picture of focus. She had built a 2-hole lead, and with just one more win needed to secure the match, she felt the fire of competition burning hotter than ever. She knew that to truly silence Nate, and the doubters who still whispered about her family's privilege, she needed to finish this with the same poise and precision that had gotten her here. The third hole was a par 5, a long sweeping fairway that required power and control in equal measure. Nate stepped up to the tee first, his hands visibly shaking as he gripped his driver. His swing, desperate and rushed, sent the ball rocketing into the air, only to slice wildly to the right, bouncing off a thick oak tree before dropping into a water hazard with a loud splash. The crowd gasped, a few students even covering their mouths in shock. Nate's face turned a deep shade of crimson, his jaw clenched so tightly it seemed his teeth might crack. His friends exchanged uneasy glances, their earlier confidence now reduced to awkward silence. Nate let out a frustrated growl, tossing his club to the side as he stormed off to the drop zone, his composure shattered. Kai, meanwhile, took a slow, steady breath as she approached the tee. She could feel the eyes of the crowd on her, the quiet, collective anticipation building. She adjusted her stance, locked her gaze on the distant green, and swung. The ball launched off her club in a flawless arc, cutting through the crisp morning air before landing in the center of the fairway, rolling an impressive 300 yards toward the green. The crowd erupted in cheers, a few students even jumping up and down as they realized the match was all but over. Nate, now forced to take his drop, stumbled through his next shot, his ball skimming the edge of the water hazard before coming to rest in a thick patch of rough. His third shot wasn't much better, slicing into a bunker just short of the green. Each mistake only seemed to deepen the pit he had dug for himself, his frustration now boiling over into visible rage. Kai approached her second shot with the calm of a seasoned pro. She adjusted her grip, calculated the distance, and sent her ball soaring toward the green, where it landed just a few yards from the pin. She could already see the victory within reach, her heart pounding with the thrill of the finish. When they reached the green, Nate was visibly trembling, his confidence shattered, his hands clumsy as he chipped his ball out of the bunker, sending it skidding past the hole. The crowd winced collectively, a few students even whispering in disbelief as they watched the once cocky senior crumble under the pressure. Kai, in stark contrast, took a slow, deliberate breath as she lined up her putt. She could feel the cool, steady pulse of victory in her veins, the roar of the crowd a distant, muffled echo as she tapped the ball gently. It rolled smoothly across the perfect green, dropping into the cup with a satisfying, unmistakable clink. Kai 3, Nate 0. The crowd erupted into full-blown cheers, the chant of Kai. Kai! Kai! Echoing across the course as students swarmed the green, their phones capturing the moment from every angle. Nate, his face a mask of humiliation and disbelief, looked around at the crowd, the same friends who had cheered him on just an hour earlier now turned into silent onlookers, their faces filled with pity and second-hand embarrassment. Kai turned to face him, her expression calm but unyielding, her eyes locking onto his. "Looks like you've got some push-ups to do, Nate," she said, her voice carrying just enough edge to cut through the stunned silence that had settled over the crowd. Nate hesitated, his pride clearly warring with his humiliation, but with dozens of phones pointed at him and the entire student body watching, he had no choice. He dropped to the grass, his arms trembling as he pushed through the first shaky reps, the crowd counting aloud as he struggled to save what little dignity he had left. As she walked away, the roar of the crowd still echoing in her ears, Kai allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. She had done more than just win a golf match. She had proven, once again, that the Trump name meant more than just privilege. It meant resilience, focus, and a fierce, unshakable drive to win. And as she disappeared into the crowd, leaving Nate to struggle through his final, humiliating push-ups, she knew she had taught him a lesson he would never forget.